Hi everyone, welcome back to It's All Light. I'm your host, Natalie Baugh, and today I am so happy because we have not just one, but two special guests, Alison and Trevor McClaws. Unfortunately, I lost the first 7 minutes of audio, so I'm going to introduce them and then we'll jump right in. So they're actually both from Arizona and have known each other since they were like 14 years old, and they're just good friends, two people I just admire so much. So wise, and I can't wait for you to hear all their wonderful thoughts. So to get to know them, I asked them their favorite Christmas tradition. Alison said homemade pizza competitions, and they make them into Christmas shapes and like Christmas pizza gingerbread houses. Sounds amazing. I can't wait to try that. And then Trevor's was reading Luke 2 and talking about it as a family, and then opening one Christmas gift. So happy holidays. Hope you're having a great holiday season. And then I also asked them to share something about life they love to get to know them a little bit better. And Alison talked about having a balance of what you need and being grateful for what you have. And knowing Alison, like, she lives by this. Like, I went to her room once and it's so simple and organized. And she was saying, yeah, like, this is all I own. And I was so amazed because I tend to just have way too much stuff. So inspired by Alison, I'm going to do a detox and get rid of a lot of things because you don't need much to live and be happy. And Trevor focused on happiness and how it's dictated on the focus of our lives and not the circumstances or situations. And he touched on focusing on the Savior brings happiness. So the episode will start, it'll jump into Alison finishing some thoughts and then dive into dating and thoughts regarding dating. So hope you enjoy.
But like, if you have like the hierarchy of needs, if you have your basics, everything else is just a plus. But we're built as like humans to want more, to need more, so that we can like achieve goals and different things like that. But sometimes it can become almost an addiction to need more and more and more and never be satisfied with what you have.
Interesting.
And I think that could be even emotionally, that could be mentally, that could be spiritually. If you never feel like it's enough, then it will never be enough. You know, you have to have gratitude for what you have and type of thing. So it's just interesting. It's just balance. You know, you can't have nothing, but you also like don't have to have everything.
Yeah,
you know,
it's
in
true.
order to have a happy life.
I've tried to focus on this. I have a long ways to go, but it's like the song from Prince of Egypt, Looking Through Heaven's Eyes, and he goes, when all you have is nothing, there's a lot to go around.
Yeah, that's true.
And then like a Sheryl Crow song, it's like, it's not having what you want, it's wanting what you've got. Do you know that song? Soak of the Sun?
But yeah, I love that song. That is a good one.
I know, it's a good one. But yeah, I love that. Trevor, do you have any thoughts before we dive into our topic today?
Any other thoughts? Not yet, not particularly, but we're ready to rock and roll.
Okay, so we're gonna just kind of go over some questions I asked on my Instagram, read people's answers, and then talk about it. So the first question I asked this time around was, what is the stigma or taboo around dating? Which you both can share your answers to, but someone said teens can't do multiple dates in a month with different people if they are a player. That one's from a different generation. That's not someone our age sharing that, so that's interesting. People take it seriously. Meeting people on dating apps is weird. Dating equals marriage. Not dating someone for very long before getting engaged and married. Being older than 24 and unmarried. Kissing on the first date. Dates mean a lot and are high pressure when they don't. They're just getting to know someone. Making out on a first date, some of the stigma. If you go out within a friend group, you'll get ostracized. If you go out, you're getting married. To not settle, and they blame it on the other gender when it's most likely them. Ooh. You have to be either serious to marry or loosely date, and that's the expectation. And how people want to get married, but they aren't in the right headspace. So those are all the responses from that one. What would you guys add? What's the stigma?
That was a pretty big list. I'm not gonna lie. Like I can like think of like this kind of stuff. Like yeah, I totally heard that. Or sometimes maybe I haven't past agreed with this. Or
right.
I don't know if I can add anything necessarily to it. I think something that at least my age, something I've seen a lot, or is just like how serious people can take dating. Of like, okay, if we date, I don't want to go on a date with them because we can get married or whatever. Like, I think they overcomplicate it. And it's, like, it's not that complicated. And I don't want to project or anything. I feel like I've shared this before, but I feel like dating in Arizona, because I'm from Arizona, and I've dated girls in Arizona. I've dated girls in Utah, and I feel like, and I'm not trying to be one of those guys who's projecting, because I love Utah. Utah is awesome. I love the people here. But there's something like we have to acknowledge, like, Utah, it's an anomaly. Like, it's not normal with how many people that have similar standards, similar faith, living in such a condensed area next to each other, where obviously there's going to be some weird cultural things. But I feel like in Arizona, it's pretty simple to date, where it was like, like, I find this person attractive. I enjoy the way I feel, when I'm around them. I like, maybe this about the personality. Yeah. And it was really like, there's no pressure, where it was just like, I'm just going to put over time, energy, effort in this. And we've broken up in 3 months. But like up here, and I have to like acknowledge, like, there's tons of just like good looking guys, tons of good looking girls, where it does make it hard, where it's like, well, if I go on dates or if I commit to dating this person, that means you have to let go of whatever's in this hand. That could be another 4 or 5 people who are also just awesome and just, this is amazing. So like, I do recognize, like, dating is a little more unique. I think particularly to Utah. I don't know if your listeners are only in Utah or in other areas, but I think that's also an important factor of my experience. Like, dating is not the same in other states versus Utah.
Yeah.
So,
agreed.
So I guess what I'm saying is, like, some stigmas could be based off of
where people are coming from. You're right. And honestly, I feel like after reading some of those answers and me knowing who put them in there, because they're my followers, I could tell like what stage of dating they're on, kind of like the younger ones and what they're saying versus the older ones and what they're saying versus another generation that's outside looking in to our generation. Like, I feel like my parents' ideas on dating are so different than what I think. And it's fun to talk to them, because dating really did seem simpler for them. I don't know if you would agree. Like, if you talk to that generation, our parents, even some of our bishopric members, like, dating just seemed less complicated. And I think there's been this stigma of complication for so many random reasons. But what do you think, Allison?
Yeah, that is such a good point. It's so true. I think that I really like everything that Trevor mentioned. And I think there is, because there's so much pressure. Even in this day and age, like in Utah, it's even more to all the extremes, I think, because dating's in the culture, like Trevor was saying, and it's so condensed. Yeah. But it's interesting, because even my friends that are in other cultures, they're starting in like other states or even other countries, they're running into this too because of dating apps. There are so many options on the dating apps.
Oh, interesting.
Even on Instagram, like having an Instagram, I've talked to some of my guy friends and they're like, it's hard because even on Instagram, all of a sudden there's a suggested friend and you see you have so many mutual friends in with them. And it's like, well, I haven't gotten to know her yet. And so it can make dating a little bit complicated, I guess, having like so many different options or different avenues to date. It's almost like too much, when back in the day it was like, if you want me to answer that specifically, back in the day, or even my parents' day, it was like you just dated who was in your town, and then people rose to the top of who you were most interested in, who you weren't, with the people around you. You didn't then get on a dating app and be like, wait, I want to put myself in Hawaii and see who's there. It's like, like it's just a little bit different circumstances and different mentalities. And I think there's a lot more self-sabotage in dating now too.
100%.
That makes it complicated too, because it's so easy to, especially like I'm 29 and we can get into age and dating probably later in this conversation, but like what makes it complicated is when you see a lot of people around you dating, or I've had relationships where I was exclusive. We've talked about marriage, but then it didn't work out. It's hard not to compare, like, why did it work out for these people and not me, even though, and then you start finding reasons. You can self-sabotage yourself away from dating and then think of it as pointless or whatever. So there are just a lot of factors that make it hard. But I think like life gets really hard in general, and I bet there's difficulties for every generation. Like there's probably difficulties that they had that we didn't necessarily have, you know? So it's just dealing and learning to manage with what you got, you know?
Oh, I think you're so right. Yeah. There's a lot with the stigma. We're going to move on, though, because we could probably talk a whole episode on the stigma. But I think I want to be a little bit more helpful and try to inspire people on how they could maybe change their dating, like, circumstances. Sometimes you can't change your circumstances, but like what Trevor was saying, you can change your perspective on it and go from there. The next question was funniest dating story. There weren't very many of them, but like a stranger asked someone out in the celestial room in the temple. They built...
All right.
Trevor's taking notes.
Amazing. They built a fort out of boxes on this guy's back porch. Mind you, they were in their mid-20s.
Oh, no, the guy who taking
I'm
just not going to talk as you read this.
Amazing. Funny but really sad. Boy started confessing all his sins to her.
No.
That's not real.
Wait. She want to date with guy who had sins?
Funny.
What's his name? Trevor?
And then a guy brought up his sales job so it could be a tax write-off.
Wait.
So marriage could be a tax.
No, the date could be because like the dollars he was spending. That's
Maybe.
Right.
Okay, so that was the only responses for that one. Not very many dating funny stories, but I know if I ask in a different way, we could get more. But the next question was, who's a couple you know that you think, wow, I want a relationship like theirs? And I love this question because then you start to realize qualities either in individual people that make it a good relationship or just what a healthy relationship looks like to you and how to seek that out. So I'll read the answers first and then we can talk about it. So, constantly laugh, banter, and have great conversations and communication. Someone said Michael, Alio, and Danielle from Bachelor in Paradise. I don't know them. I don't know if anyone watches that. Someone's great aunt and uncle because they're always together, supportive, kind, genuine, and caring. And they have a deep love of the gospel and have fun. A couple who's centered on God and serving each other, their family, and others. A couple that is best friends and always looking to serve each other, aware of needs. A couple who's calm, loving, and understanding. And Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds because they love the sarcasm and the way they talk about each other. And then my neighbor mentioned her and her husband. And she was my young women's leader and my best friend's mom. And I feel like their relationship is also one of those like calm yet powerful relationships. Like it's kind of that unspoken power that you can just tell that they love each other and work well together. So, yeah. What do you guys think? Who came to your mind when I asked that question?
Yeah, good.
If anyone.
Not myself, I'll tell that much. Who came to my obviously it was my parents and my sister. I think I was very fortunate, very blessed to be raised in the household that I was, and there's a lot of just characteristics that I admire about my parents. It's the way that they loved each other. I mean, my mom was kind of this happy-go-lucky personality. And they both each just had this fire about the gospel, and it wasn't like this boring topic. It wasn't something you just talked about, something you did. But also just like they love serving, whether it's each other, but like they love like serving in their callings and just giving. But I also, one thing that I do love is they're not like each individual, and this also goes very well with my sister and her husband. Like they don't think life is just this pristine, perfect, fragile thing. Like they know how to roll up their sleeves and get dirty and get to work. And because that's what it comes down to. I mean, people set these expectations or frame these relationships in their mind that's going to be perfect and there's not going to be arguments. No, there are going to be a lot of tough conversations.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of repenting that need to be done. People got to be humble and say, I'm sorry. And also on the flip side of accepting people's apologies. And I think, my parents' relationship wasn't this perfect thing where there's like, hey, there was never a fight. There was never a disagreement in the house. No, there was plenty of those. Probably because of me most of the time, honestly, with my siblings. Absolutely. But their ability to forgive quickly and not to allow it to affect the way that they treated each other afterwards. Yeah. Just to work. Like they both have this work ethic that is unparalleled to anything I've seen. And so anyway, there's 1,000 things I feel like I could just run off about my sister and her husband and my own parents, but those are some of the things that I think come to mind.
Oh, I love that. I think with my parents too, like they hit 30 years and someone at my dad's office was asking like, oh, what's helped you stay together for so long? And part of it was just like spending time together and going to the temple, but also like when they got married, they like, despite their temple covenant commitments, they kind of promised each other on their own, like no matter what, we will work through whatever is thrown our way, whatever we go through, we will stick together and work through it. And yeah, like luckily I don't remember my parents fighting a ton growing up, but like it is very normal to have arguments and disagreements, and now it's more funny and endearing the older they get and the older we get, you know, and the more we know and realize our parents aren't perfect, but just that helps us see like, oh, our parents aren't perfect, but look what they've made of this and how they took each other's imperfections and were patient with each other and worked together and continue to do that every day. It really is a miracle and beautiful and takes a lot of work. Yeah. Thank you, Trevor.
Yeah.
Alison, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many good examples of marriage, and like a lot of marriages have different strengths too. Like when you said that, I could think of so many different ones, and I'm like, oh, they're really strong in this aspect. They're really strong in this aspect.
Yeah.
Funny, I was actually just visiting with some of my friends who are married. They just moved back to Utah.
Fun.
And there are a couple that I was there during their dating process. So I was like helping her process through, helping them like get to marriage. It was just like,
wow.
And so I was like really up and close with them, and I hadn't talked to them in a while, and they've been married I think like 5 years now. So I just like dug deep when I was at their house the other night. I was like, so what's it like? You've been married 5 years, you know, just asking them all the hard. And I was like, what do you think makes you guys work? You know, I just asked them point blank, and I really like what they said. They're like, we know how to talk to each other. Like we are just 100% open with each other, even if that means, and they gave an example, they're like, even if that means like someone seems a little off and then the other person's like, hey, what's wrong? You don't just say, oh, nothing. You could even say, yeah, something's wrong. And then the other person's like, then you have to say, does it have to do with me? Did I hurt your feelings? Or is it just something wrong? And then the other person would be like, either say, yeah, it was you, but I'm not ready to talk about it yet. Or yeah, it was you, and they talk about it. Or no, it has nothing to do with you, not ready to talk about it. Or yeah, nothing to do with you, let's talk about it.
Wow.
And I just think that good marriages, really, it all comes down to, like Trevor was saying, like your focus. It comes like, what is that focus? And if it's the Savior and if it's your mutual values in life, you're going to be successful. But you can have all the same values and focus and no communication, and you will fail.
Oh, yeah.
It's like you have to learn how to argue well. You have to learn how to have the good conversations well. Like you just have to learn how to be in communication. And communication isn't only verbal communication. It's like, you know,
eye rolling, like, all that stuff. Like I am a notorious eye roller. If I'm bugged, I just roll my eyes, you know, like, and that's, I had a guy I dated a long time ago kind of point that out to me, and he's like, that's actually like pretty rude. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't know what that meant to you. A lot of it goes back down to what things mean to us, because we all have our own perceptions on literally everything. But I love that you were saying, like, ask like, are you okay? And then, like, sometimes people can bury it and not talk about it, but the more curious you get, the more you understand, okay, we'll wait, we'll talk about it later. Oh, it's not about me, it's about them. And that, I feel like when people do that to me, like in relationships that I've had that, it helps me start to realize, oh, like, why am I annoyed, or why am I being a little weird right now? Even sometimes I don't even know why I'm acting the way I am until I stop and think about it, and then I'm like, oh yeah, it's probably because this happened, you know? Like, I think I'm going so fast that I rarely stop, and then sometimes I get jumbled up in what I'm feeling, and like then I start acting how I'm feeling, and it is helpful when people notice it. Usually for me it's when I get really quiet because I'm always talking. so if I'm ever like super quiet, people who know me well are always like, what's wrong? And I'm like, can I not be quiet? But they're always right.
You're like, no, you can't.
But yeah, I mean, they're not wrong. It's usually a vibe. You can feel it when someone's not well or annoyed or something like that. But, oh, I love that. Are we ready for the next question? Do you have any other thoughts on... We could talk about healthy relationships for a whole episode as well, but I think what you shared covered some really great points. Okay, the next question. What are the highest challenges when it comes to dating? And people said finding someone not politically extreme and also someone who keeps the Sabbath day holy, communicating effectively. A girl said, I feel like I have to sacrifice part of my dream guy, and I want to know what is okay to sacrifice. That's actually pretty big, for me at least. Finding others with the attitude that casual dates are how you really get to know others. People being open and honest about how they truly feel. Commitment. Finding people to date with similar worldview and outlook. Relationship, OCD, and anxiety. Finding someone with high standards that I'm also attracted to. Trying to feel good enough for someone. Someone said they just have to like me. Getting her to commit. Funny plug, that's the guy I'm dating. He answered that one for me. I know. Well, next week's going to be a whole episode on my commitment issues. It's not in the way you think it is, but I mean, I'm very open with like so many things that like it's an open conversation between who I date. So, and then the last two were used to be finding people who are interested enough in me and choose them as much as you want to choose them. And then someone said responsiveness. So those are the highest challenges when it comes to dating. I feel like this kind of goes back to our stigma question. The stigma is kind of the challenge, but what would you guys add to that?
Help me understand the question. You're asking
like
what are some of the roadblocks that we normally find in relationships, or is like that we've found in relationships, or
I think a better question is what's hard about dating? Like why is it hard for you to date? Why is it hard for other people to date and commit to each other? I feel like people aren't getting married as frequent as years past. Like I had 3 friends get married, which actually seems like a lot this summer, but at the same time, I go to church and I see all these amazing people. I'm like, why are none of you dating each other or getting married? You're all so amazing. But I just don't know why people don't date, so I'm wondering what challenges there are for that.
Sorry, you want to go first?
No,
I feel like
you
I'm
go
always
first.
going first.
You go first.
No,
It helps
sorry.
me think.
Well, yeah, I feel like there's a lot to chew on that. I feel like there's a lot of good answers to that. My initial thought is, I mean, I feel like there's a part of me that's like, well, it's kind of obvious. I mean, like, dating takes effort. Dating is hard, and in a world where, being 26, I'm in the middle of my career. Life's good. Like, I make decent. I don't make like crazy money, but enough. Like, I can go travel when I want. I can take days off. I don't have to respond to anybody. I don't need to be home at a certain time. Like, I have the liberty to do what I want, when I want, and how I want. And so, like, there's a lot of freedom in that. And so when you're asking someone, hey, like, let's give things a chance. Let's date. It's like, oh my gosh, like, that's a lot of work. It's a complete 180 shift in this life that YSA or single adults are living right now. Like, you're asking them to give up so much. And I'm not like that. Yeah, let's stay on that trajectory. No, obviously not. I also feel like what can make dating difficult or hard, and obviously people have lived 2 completely separate lives to this point. And so it's like, I've had my life A, and a different girls had an entire different life with different perspective and experiences. And so what's hard is like, listen, we're not going to live, what would it look like together? And I feel like, and I've had moments of struggle with this as well. And I've seen friends as well, but it's like, sometimes people get caught up with, like, you brought up the example of the Sabbath day, right? Of, well, me growing up, the Sabbath day looked like X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
For her family, what was totally normal for her was the Sabbath day was like this.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, like, those are important things to talk about and remember. But I think what's more important is saying, hey, listen, I have this background, you have that background, I don't care. The question is, what life, how would we want to, keep the Sabbath day holy together? What would that look like?
Mm-hmm.
And if you communicate, right? Alison's talked about communicating. If you guys communicate and say, I don't care what my background is and what yours is, but what do we want going forward together? What does this sound like? Or you fill it in with any other important thing to you. And that's where I think you see a lot more progress of, this isn't as scary as a conversation. Or you actually find out, hey, these are actually non-negotiables that he or she's not willing to give up, and I have to have this. And at the end of the day, you can only be grateful to saying, hey, I'm not wasting more time and energy and love and stuff like that. It's not going to work out anyway.
Wow. So profound. Putting that on a quote template and people can read that. I think it's interesting what you said at the beginning of this question. You mentioned the mentality of maybe some guys, and I feel like that mentality you described of being comfortable in their career, able to do really anything they want, they have a job, freedom. I feel like my perception of every guy in Vineyard in that category, usually 25 and older, 26 and older, is that. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, they're just comfortable. And I think our bishop in the ward once mentioned, like, the guys have gotten to that point, and usually in the quote unquote normal like life, you get married in between college and finding your career and go from there. But because that was skipped over, they're just going, but they have to go back and get there. Because I think about all my friends who got married, and honestly, their husbands were either still in school or figuring out where they're going with their life, younger and not quite in that mentality yet. And honestly, it's so interesting to think about where your mentality shifts when you get older, as well as, the circumstances of your life, and then how you deal with that. But I think it would come down to just having that desire and working for it. And then it really does just take finding the right person and the feeling, and there's a lot more to it, and timing. But I don't know. I think your thoughts were so interesting. And I'm trying to remember all that you said. But, the last thing you mentioned was, remind me, I was focusing on the first part of it, but then you went into...
The last part that I brought up was...
I want to remember it because it was important.
Yeah, the first part was, hey, it takes effort, and then the second part...
Giving up. Was it like not wanting to give up the...
That was part of the first part.
That was kind of the first part. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, the second part, was... It's more like, hey, listen, like, we each have these
oh,
patterns.
yeah.
We focus on it. It's like, hey, she grew up swimming on Sunday. I didn't do that on the Sabbath day.
So then, moving forward.
And I did it. What would we want together, right?
Yeah. So it's kind of moving your mentality of what your life looks like and then merging it with someone else's, which is really hard. I think that's why marriages struggle, is because you are coming from two separate backgrounds and you're trying to merge that into one. So yeah, I love that you brought that up, because while you're dating and getting to know people, which I think people should give more people a chance, like more than just a date, because honestly, things change so much within a first few dates. You actually get to see people in different circumstances and environments. But then the more you like start dating someone consecutively, then you start to realize your differences of how you were raised and how you do different things. And it is interesting. Sometimes it's very frustrating, but I think the biggest thing there is just get curious, start asking questions instead of being disappointed from your expectations. Okay, Allison, what have you been thinking?
Oh, well, that was really good. Like, we could just go off of that. But since he kind of like dealt with like the hardship between like both choosing each other as like two new people coming together, I'll talk a lot about what someone goes through. Maybe more women, I don't know, maybe women and men go through this, but like a lot of dating, the hard thing about dating is that it doesn't work until it does. Mm-hmm. And so your brain is built to not do stuff that doesn't work. Your brain's literally trying to protect you and make you want to succeed. So when things bring anxiety, when things bring grief, when things bring sometimes these negative emotions that dating can bring, it can create this false belief in your mind, or many false beliefs in your mind of like, this doesn't work, this is scary, this is not going to work for me. Or like other false beliefs can be created to actually keep you away from dating because it can hurt, right?
Oh, yeah.
But then it's going to work one day, And it, like, marriage will work one day, but you can ask any married people, like, unless they married their high school sweetheart, which happens, or their first boyfriend or girlfriend ever, which happens. I'm like, those suckers. I'm just kidding.
Honestly, though.
I know, I'm just kidding.
I know.
But what I'm saying that is, like, your brain is creating all this evidence that it's not working. So then your brain is creating also sometimes these false things about you or about relationships to keep you away from it. And if you can, like, rise above that mentally, which is really hard to do. Like, I think that we don't give enough credit to, like Trevor was saying, like, it takes work. Like, it's hard. Like, and it's fun too on the other end. Like, being in a relationship is so much fun, and you can get such a thrill and such a dopamine hit from all the things, and, like, your brain also wants that. So it's this weird battle in your brain of, like, I want that so bad, but also this hurts me. You have to rise above that. And sometimes those false beliefs that are created to keep you away from dating are like, maybe I'm not good enough, maybe I'm not pretty enough, maybe I'm not this enough, and that's why dating isn't working. But you really have to be in tune with the Spirit and choose to believe that what God has taught us about who we are and what we're worth is what's true. And so, honestly, being, like, in this dating scene for so long, it's a big mental challenge also, because it's different culturally, being my age and not married. It's a little bit different, but honestly, it's helped me build such a stronger mentality that I don't know if I could have built in any other way for me, that I'm glad it's worked out this way so far.
The older I get, I still feel young, but the older I get, and I've had friends who've got married older, I like to ask them kind of what helped them as they got older. Like, there's a lady in my ward got married at 35, and my cousin got married at 30, and a few other friends a little bit older. And even a lady in the temple, like, I don't know how it came up, but she mentioned she got married at 29, and I just kind of was like, oh, I'm curious your experience, and like, just whispering in the temple, she kind of was just sharing, like it kind of you get to that point where you have to just realize, like, there's so many things you wouldn't have been able to do if you had been married sooner, and I am so grateful for all the experiences I've been through up till now, and one of the other ladies was like, if God cared so much to have an apostle call you on your mission, like, how much more do you think God is caring about who you're going to marry for eternity? You know, like, God is in the details, and he is making it work through whatever configuration he has, and with our agency and what we're choosing. Like, I dated a guy when I think I got the answer that was pretty clear, no, don't date him, but then 2 months later I decided to go for it anyways. And then I don't know if that, like, in my head it's like, oh yeah, that slowed down my process, or I could have been married sooner if I hadn't done this. But at the same time, God knew I was going to do that anyways, and then I had to learn a lot from that experience, and then that's put me to where now I'm even more prepared for what's coming next, and hopefully that is marriage in my near future. I don't know, maybe in a few years, but I don't know. I think that's really cool that with your experience, I mean, you just have a greater appreciation for life and for those around you, for yourself, because like you said, it's easy to go into that self-sabotage mindset, but when you check yourself, or in a sense, or just remember what it's all for, what you're learning, it's easier to be happier, even if you're not getting what you want right away.
Can I make another comment?
Please.
Think about what Alison was saying about, and also you as well, like, hey, got the answer. No, don't date this guy. 2 months later, we went back. Or Alison talking about, like, we have these strong feelings about, self-love or whatever it is. And I think another thing that's important to what makes dating challenging, right, is something that I think we don't give enough attention, and it's our feelings, right? And so you hear people talk about, hey, feel your feelings and then move on, right? Instead of dwelling on it. But I think there's an important thing to remember is that, feelings don't dictate truth. They don't. And so, like, and even if, like, I've had very strong, very real feelings that, I want to punch my brother. Like, are the feelings real? Yes, they're real. Is it true that I should do that? Absolutely not. I shouldn't, right? And so what's hard is, like, we're going to have these very strong emotions of, like, wow, she is cute. She is this. But then, like, we also know there's a couple things or whatever it is. Like, I know I shouldn't, but oh, it'd be so fun, or whatever it is. Like, it's hard because we have these very strong emotions, which are good overall. Like, but I mean, on the flip side of that, I mean, not to get too off topic, but like I was very fortunate to serve a mission, and I also think about, people that I had the privilege to meet and to talk with and have awesome experiences with, and it's like, okay, like why did some of these people get, disowned by their families? Why did they give up addictions? Why did they, get married, or to not live and stop having sex with somebody, or stop, drinking or smoking? Like, why? What did it come down to? And as you break it down, it's like they changed their whole life around because of a feeling. Like, that's why they changed. And so feelings are so powerful and so strong. And so I don't think we give enough credit. Obviously, within the church and the gospel, it teaches us, hey, like, in D&C 8, you can feel them in your heart, and your mind. But oftentimes with dating, it's tough because, like, I'm only feeling it in one place. Or, my head's screwed up right now. I think I feel something here. And it's like, it's this whirlwind of what's so tough. And anyway, I think it's an important aspect of this balance about our feelings, of how intricate it is. And
wow, yeah.
So.
Well, totally. And I feel like for me, sometimes I use it as a cop-out answer, like I just don't know what I'm feeling, and therefore I don't make any decisions because my feelings seem so unclear, and I have so much uncertainty about what my feelings are actually meaning. And so I think I need to just start even smaller and start identifying what different feelings mean to me, and then from there I can be more sure in making decisions. But it's hard to... Everyone's always like, trust your gut or listen to your heart. And the older I get, the more I'm like, okay, now what does that mean? Like, what is my gut telling me? Or...
Not so much bigger recently, I can't trust him anymore.
I also think anxiety can get in the way too, which is so hard because, I don't know. Allison.
Funny.
Allison, you did kind of mention, like, not in these words, but just like fight or flight. Sometimes our brain trying to protect us. Like, I don't know about you two, but I've definitely been through some like pretty brutal heartache, and it's probably the worst pain I've ever felt. Like, it is miserable. So anytime anyone's going through that, I just like give them a big hug because it's just the worst. But because we've been through that in our past, maybe even if we're not understanding what those feelings are, it is kind of that fear of getting hurt again or hurting someone. I think that can be an even harder pain if it goes that direction. But what helps you kind of understand your feelings? Specifically toward dating, but also in general.
That is a great question.
How do we understand our feelings, that you asked?
Yeah.
I don't.
Does it feel pretty clear to you, Trevor? Like, you usually know what a feeling means to you?
Yeah, like, I would say, yeah, like, I think, maybe I'm having a hard time with this question. It's like...
Because that's just second nature.
I've only had 26 years of experiences with myself to know, hey, when I feel this, it usually means X, Y, or Z. Or, You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I've gotten to know the way that I act or react to situations or circumstances to know, hey, like, this is a good feeling. This is not a good feeling. Or, hey, independently of this feeling, and it feels good, it's not good. And so, like, I've been able to, like, distinguish this balance of, like, measuring out my feelings versus, intellectually, okay, they're not valid right now. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make it right or true. So, I don't know. I don't know if I'm even answering that, but I just feel like that's life. Like, that's living life and experiencing and getting better than you.
Well, I feel like you just simplified that, at least for me, and hopefully for other people who maybe are fast-paced thinking. But, like, it really does just kind of boil down to, is it a good feeling or is it a bad feeling? And therefore what? Like, it doesn't have to be as complicated as we make it. So, thank you. Mm-hmm. What about you, Allison?
I think that Trevor hit it on the dot. And I think he knows his feelings because he's self-aware. Mm-hmm. Like, Trevor's a very self-aware person. And... so if you get confused, and I don't mean to say this so bluntly, but I say this bluntly because I had spent many years trying to figure out what I was feeling and not. Like, through therapy, through other things. It wasn't just, like, a natural thing for me. But, like, if you are confused on how you feel and you can't read it, it's because you don't know yourself. And then that's point blank. And getting to know yourself is just like getting to know anyone else. Like, even though you're fully aware of your thoughts, you're fully aware of your emotions, you still have to get to know yourself, just like any relationship. And one of the best relationships you can strengthen, one of the best things you can give to a future spouse, or even the best gift you can give to your future children, is getting to know yourself. Because then if you know how to help yourself be happy, you know what you're feeling, like, and it takes a lifetime to do that, but you're like getting to know yourself, being self-aware, is that. So it's funny that you mentioned that, because at times that I can't decide too how I'm feeling, I'm like, interesting, this means that I don't know myself as well in this area. So I need to like journal. I need to ask myself the right questions. I need to get to know myself as if I was getting to know someone else. And then that can help you understand your feelings when you actually know yourself.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like I've done that up and down in my own life, but like my indecision for sure, like I think it plays to exactly what you just said. I also think, like, even at my job, like they ask questions like, what are you wired for, or what like fills your cup, and what makes you feel helpful. Like, it gets down to those things too, of where you can put forth your best effort in whatever capacity you can do, because when you're capitalized on how you know yourself, then you work better. And so I think in relationships too, I mean, everyone always says, like, if you're not dating someone, or like, what can you do to be prepared, it's work on yourself. And everyone always says it's the cliche answer, but it's really true. It's a true answer. So thank you, Alison. I love that. Trevor, do you have any thoughts before I go to the next question?
No. You're good to go to the next.
Okay. I'll wrap it up in the next 2 minutes, because we're already at 40 minutes. So I'm going to let you choose between the last 2 questions. We can either talk about how do you know when you found the person you want to marry, or...
Next.
No.
Or we could talk about what do you want when it comes to dating, and what's one thing you look for in a person. So
you're just full of the good questions, Natalie. Can you repeat them one more time?
yeah, so I asked some people, like, how do they know when they found the person they want to marry, as well as like, what do you want and what do you look for?
Oh, okay.
I could just share the first one, then we could talk about the second one. How does that sound? Okay, I'll just share them really fast, because these were actually really sweet. So someone says, when it feels like 1 + 1 = 10. When they make...
Not even 3, 10. That's amazing.
It says, when they make you better than you could be by yourself. When they feel like home with the spirit, and you choose to love them with knowledge of their flaws and not just being attached. When it comes very easy and very natural. The thought of being with someone else makes you sick. Their quirks don't bug you like they have with other guys. Seeing greater... I know.
This is not that. I'm just kidding, sorry.
No, I like it. Thank you. My friend said, seeing greater potential for myself spiritually and otherwise than without them. Being the type of person you want to marry first, and finding someone who is aligned. Answer the question, do they inspire me to be better? And then vice versa, do I inspire them to be better? Physical attraction, spiritually aligned, and personalities are compatible. Plug right there. I listened to the Art of Dating podcast. It was from my old institute professor / MTC choir director. And he said, when someone says, oh, I wasn't feeling it with someone, usually you can trace that back to some level of compatibility that didn't match. So that's an interesting thought. And then someone else said, it's like when it's natural and peaceful, when he's everything my ex wasn't, when they might not be what you expected or wanted, but they're who you need. Expect the unexpected, people. And then someone said, can I live with them? If yes, okay, then can I live without them? Which I like that. I like thinking about that a lot. I also think sometimes distance in a relationship helps for a few days to kind of see what you're like away from each other. That really helps put things into perspective. And then just a very real and calm sense of knowing, which, I don't know. I'm hopeful that will come to everyone. Most married people I've talked to can say, like, yeah, it just felt natural. Do you guys feel like you get the same answer when you talk to your married friends?
No.
Oh, really?
No, I've had like a myriad of answers.
Yeah.
I feel like I've heard it all at this point.
Okay,
Go.
that's reassuring, because sometimes I'm like, if it's not natural, it's not right, but that's not true.
It's also, what's the definition of natural? Anyway, you keep going.
Yeah, I want to hear your thoughts.
No, well, I mean, like, yeah, there's gonna be bits and pieces, right? But like, their story's theirs, and I think what happens, a lot of people try to say, this is what it was for us. Therefore, if it's not this, then kick rocks. It's not the right person. Like, no, it's not. It's not their story. So, like, an example is like, I've had people in my life where it's like, it was awesome. Like, it's like the fairy tale, right? Just, when they saw each other, they started talking, and they just, awesome feeling.
Sparks
then, like, I also think it's not abnormal to have anxieties or stresses leading up to the marriage. Like, I have a sibling to where, like, he knew, and this is leading up to, like, getting married. He's like, yeah, I know she's awesome and what I need, and she's great, but he was dealing with a lot of anxiety. Like, it was stressing the crap out of him, and like, he was almost like backing out and whatnot, and like, that's how it was for him, like, just overthinking everything. And I think people need to also understand and say, hey, that's also very normal, and that's absolutely okay.
I have heard that story multiple times.
Yeah. Like, he went through, and he married her, and very quickly after, a couple months afterwards, or a couple weeks, whatever, he's like, oh yeah, like, this is dope.
Like, why did I worry about that?
Yeah, exactly. But I think when people try to project what their story was for other people, like, no, it's not. Like, that's your story. It's awesome. It's beautiful. And that's what's unique. But it's like, it's the exact same principle. Like, my relationship with Father isn't the same relationship that you have. Like, it's different. It's unique. It's personable. And so I think we can talk about principles. I think we can talk about, hey, like, this was, something that was important to me. But when people go as far as saying, if it's not this, then I think that's when you're kind of in the danger zone.
I love that.
Yeah, and I'll just add one quote to that, because I know you have the one more question. But the quote that I'll say is that I heard is that every relationship, sorry, my braces make it hard to talk. Every relationship has problems, but it's the relationships that are stronger than the problems that make it.
It's cool.
And I love that, because it's true. It's like, if you go in thinking I need to look where there's no problems, it's not going to work that way. You actually got to go in thinking, what problems can I choose, and will we be stronger than those to make it through? Wow. And that's all I'll say on that.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah, that is a very profound quote, and it applies to so many things. Or you could switch out words and it means the same thing. I think my favorite quote with, like, marriage is a conference talk, and it was like, if you look for the bad, you'll find the bad. If you look for the good, you'll find the good. And I think in a relationship, similar to the problems you see and being stronger than them, it goes to the same for what you see in each other. Okay, be thinking of your takeaways as I read through the last question, because I'll ask you about your takeaways from our conversation. So the last question was, what do you want when it comes to dating? Yeah, here we go. A lot of people said honesty, communication, laughter, stability, trust, fun, serving together, spiritual and smart partner with physical awareness, but it said attractiveness. I said that wrong. People want to date to marry, and giving someone a fair shot, best effort, and creating true love. Okay, so that's kind of the last thing. I'll ask you both one thing you are looking for, and then we'll jump into a takeaway from this whole episode.
Oh, you're looking at me. Okay. So there are so many things. There's so many of the basics, right? Like, strong testimony, treats me well. Emotionally available is huge, because it's like, that's hard to be these days, is emotionally available.
Totally.
But if you want my number one thing that makes me notice a guy, like, this is the number one, is how he treats other people. 100%. I could barely know someone, and if they're good to everyone around them, that's an automatic, like, I should get to know that person. And so, like, that is massively huge, because how they treat people, especially the people they don't need in their life, that's how they're probably going to treat you eventually. And so that's, like, the number one thing that opens my
door.
Mine's too. Getting to know he opens. Our door just randomly opened.
Oh.
And so right when I said open,
The door opened. That's amazing.
Anyway.
No, I love that. And in my last podcast episode, I mentioned too, like how they treat their family is how they're going to treat you. I mean, you become family. But yeah, I love observing people and seeing how they treat others. Thank you. What about you, Trevor?
Yeah, not to just copy and paste. Door.
The door opened in.
It's freezing.
It's so cold. Oh, you have to lock it. Okay, there we go.
We're set. No, you're fine.
Okay, so yeah, not to copy and paste Allison, but like, yeah, obviously, besides like, hey, like, Father and Jesus is more important than me, and you know, the gospel sense of that, like, the other aspect is just quite simply the thing that's most important to me is that she's kind. This life's tough, and if I have to marry someone who's not kind and make it that much more tough, kill me. Like that's a drag. But I think the exact same thing is Allison. Like that's what I look for a ton is when I'm at social events. Like, is she just talking to like the cutest boys in the room, or just the popular girls, or the people that are the most, you know, easy to you know, be attracted to, that's just like emotionally or, you know, socially or whatever. Like when I find someone who's just as kind to, you know, every single person in that room, but also kind of aware of the other people, I think for me, I get, stoked, super happy. So this
Yeah.
super important
Well,
to me.
I think what both of you said reflects that person that you're noticing is self-aware of themselves and have been confident in themselves to then seek outward and focus on others. And that, I think both of you do a great job at that. So you're well on your way.
All right.
No, for real though. I really do mean that from the bottom of my heart. You guys are great examples, and I was thrilled that you accepted to talk on the podcast. Okay, so we've talked about a billion things. Do you have kind of an uplifting takeaway that we can end on? Just you personally, what's your takeaway from today?
Can I just maybe just a thought?
Yeah,
Instead of like
of
maybe
course.
I don't know if we've talked about it, just a thought.
Please.
Was a thought. I imagine, I don't know who's listening, obviously, but it's like maybe these are people who are maybe struggling with dating. Maybe it's, you know, people who are married and they're still dating, right? Like that doesn't end. But I think what's just like important is as I've kind of just reflected on my experiences dating and people I've dated, what I've just been thinking about as we've been having these conversations is that like that the sweetest thing about the atonement of Jesus Christ is that he takes things that are bad or that are bitter or tough and can still make things good. Like, you know, as we were talking, I was thinking of one relationship that I had that just broke me when this girl broke up with me. I was in love with her, and for me, it's like, oh, I was crushed. But then again, like it was another experience, because all experiences can be good, you know, if we learn from it, and it's the Savior that allows us to learn from those experiences. And so, I just think about, you know, that's kind of the thing I guess I want to close with is like, yeah, like even though we've had maybe bad experiences, like Christ makes all bad things good. Like that's what it is. And that even goes for ongoing relationships that you may have. Like, yeah, surprise, no one's perfect. You know, that boyfriend you're dating or that girlfriend, the person you're married to, like, congrats. Like, yeah, they also are going to need the atonement, and they're going to need you just as much as their corner. So I think it's not thinking you're above, you know, anything, and also allowing people to repent. You're allowing people to try again. So
I love that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I know we talked about so many things that it's hard to even like wrap it up in one thought, but I guess the last thing that I'll share is a girl came up to me who's also my age just like 2 weeks ago. She's exactly my age. She's 29. And she was just like starting to break down. And I've had this happen multiple times. I've been there. You know what I mean? It's just like an interesting thing. And she was just like, Allison, like, how do you stay happy? Like, how do you move forward? And I'm like, well, one, it's not like I'm happy all the time. Like, you're going to have ups and downs. But I can say that I think the cure for a lot of things going on with Trevor really established, like, okay, Christ can make everything good through this whole mess of dating and happiness of dating, too. So since he already touched on the Savior, I just like want to touch one more time again on gratitude, because I just think that gratitude is the healer of loneliness. Gratitude will get you, it literally changes your brain. Like there are studies that the moment you start becoming grateful, different parts of your brain starts turning on.
Wow.
And gratitude, and this might sound a little intense, but like we aren't guaranteed, like I'm not guaranteed the next 6 months of my life. Like that is just life. Like you're really not guaranteed. So sometimes when I'm worried, like, oh no, like what if I never get married? I'm like, what if I don't make it to next year? Like, what do I want to be experiencing right now? And so I just want to leave with that is something that has really helped me. And yeah, besides the Savior, which is like the number one, but that too.
Aw, both of those are great final thoughts. I feel like as both of you shared those final thoughts, my thought went to, oh no, it just kind of left my brain. It just kind of accepting who you are, but also accepting that you can create the life you want, and it's not, doesn't have to be complicated or excruciating or painful or hard. You just got to take little steps to get there, and that involves including the Savior, repenting daily, being grateful, and then recognizing that you really do have power to do whatever you want with your life, despite any circumstance. And I'm just so grateful that we get to create the lives we want, and if that involves Christ, great, and I think your life will be better for it. But whatever journey you're on, like whatever makes you feel happy and whatever fills your cup and helps you connect, then to focus on that, focus on your passions, because that can't be taken away from you. So thank you both so much. I appreciate you taking your time out of today, and I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. And my little tagline is spread the light and light the passion. So thank you guys. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thanks, Nat. See ya.
Bye, guys. Thank you.